and welcome back to this episode of This Healthy Life podcast. I'm very excited for my guest today. I have Vince Pitstick, and he is the founder of Vidal Coaching, and he is here to share his wealth of knowledge of how he's helping people uncover unexplained illness and how he's tying together concierge medicine and coaching. So very excited for you to join today, Vince. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Erica. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'd love for you to start with a little bit deeper intro about yourself and how you got into this space. I know you have a background in personal training, coaching, and then you got into the more functional side. So would love to hear how that kind of all came together and how you got into this space.
Yeah, I think like most entrepreneurs or pioneers or anybody that has a significant impact in like a particular field, it starts with a lot of pain, right? So from a very young age, at 7 years old, I was struck with a very rare physical and mental disorder that kind of left me in the bubble for a very long time. And we traveled the world trying to figure solutions, kind of a drop out of the Western medical system, if you will, because, every person I went to tried to throw me on a lot of drugs. And even at a very young age of 7, I'm like, I'm not taking any of these drugs. And thank God I didn't at the time, because they ended up being pretty bad for a lot of people. And, it took me about, all the way up till I was about 14 years old to start getting any benefit, because we figured out, that I grew up on a farm. And we, at the time, the types of chemicals that was being used on the farm, mixed with some other traumas from my childhood, kind of came together. My family unit kind of had fallen apart. Plus, I was always in the cornfields. You couldn't get me inside. I was outside 24/7. Well, that exposure left me pretty sick. And so, but the combination of functional practitioners, or at the time they didn't have that word, it was like finding holistic health doctors, therapists, nutritionists. Like it was like this big, trying to find all the solutions was really, really difficult and challenging. And then I ended up self-medicating later on in life, trying to deal with it with street drugs. Then, of course, had addiction issues related to drugs. And through that entire process of finally coming full circle and healing, I kind of was able to find my answers outside of the Western medical system, right? So a lot of my crash course into what was missing in the Western medical system came from my experience as a very young kid. And then from there, I kind of had a passion. So I kind of, dropped out of college. I was like 3 years into my 4-year degree for finance. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? I'm doing it because somebody else wants me to do this because it looks good on paper and because this is what I think people want me to do. And I'm like, I have no passion for this, and I don't want. Who's going to give me money? And I don't want to use anybody else's money. So, anyways, I moved into it again, going back to school on nutrition and stuff. But really, a lot of my experience came from being in the trenches as a personal trainer. And this was during the personal training boom, about 20 years ago now. And I kind of realized very early on that people were coming to me for problems that just applying 5 days of training wasn't going to solve. Right. Anything from mood disorders, infertility, hormone issues, they all led to weight issues. But a lot of people, when they don't know what's wrong with them, can easily identify a stomach. They're like, oh, this is probably why I don't feel well, or this is probably why X or Y or Z. And usually that's just the symptom. Right. So they're in a journey of searching. They've discovered the first symptom, but they still don't know what the root is. And I knew from a very early age that that's how that stuff worked because of my own experience. So I ended up building a program about the age of, I think right now I'm 28 years old. I built it's 26. I built a program that instead of like you buying personal training, I started incorporating nutrition. I started incorporating nutritional consultation, which is what we called it at the time, supplementation. But then I decided to go to full membership model. So it was like, you just bought my program for a monthly. It included group classes because I wanted them in community. It included like one training session a week. And then every other week it included a lifestyle nutritional coaching consult, right? But then it also included a couple of free visits with the chiropractor, with our acupuncturist. And then, because I was in this facility that had like multiple modalities in it. and none of them were talking to each other. No one was like hanging, like none of the practitioners were working together as medicine does.
Yeah.
And it was very early, and there was this hormone clinic, which seemed very early. Remember, this is like before vitamin D and fish oil were even popular. It seemed fringe
Right.
at the time to be vitamin D and fish oil. and so I got blood work included from them, and they did a review of your hormones. The chiro looked at you, gave you some advice on stretches and whatever else. Acupuncturist was there for the nervous system and trying to like open you up and like get rid of any any potential other physical issues you have going on while we were working the program. And it grew in popularity. Now remember, this is 20 years ago, right? So like people are like, what the hell are you doing? And but I got great results, and all people really gave a shit about was like, hey, do I look great or not? Even though it's more bigger than that. Most people, they're aesthetically driven, even if they say they want to be healthy, right? But then I got picked up, I got poached by a global health organization called Metagenics. And I went to train under Dr. Jeffrey Bland and some of the best doctors in the world in functional medicine. I mean, he's considered the godfather. He founded the IFM. I got very, very lucky. I got to train under some other amazing practitioners, Dr. Christy Hughes, and just the list goes on and on and on of amazing people. And I discovered this whole new world. I'd already been in competitive bodybuilding. I'd already been in the fat loss nutrition world, fitness nutrition. I'd seen all kinds of sides of it. But then to find this functional nutrition world that exists, and really the word functional health coach didn't exist. Mm-hmm. We made it up. We literally made it up like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Or now it'd be
now it's every kind of health coach wants to be a functional health coach, right?
Right. So, but it did not exist. We created the first like title for it. Mm-hmm. And that happened right as I was leaving Metagenics, because I became the consultant behind some of the biggest doctors in the country, right? In all fields, in all areas. So because they train you to be as a functional medicine consultant. So I come in, I consult for your practice. And what I'm doing is I'm improving your protocols. I'm improving how you process your insurance, how you set up cash pay services, how you try to incorporate nutrition, how do you try to incorporate holistic services, everything from training your staff to customer journey to, you name it, right? Client retention, patient retention. And so I got to understand all the ins and outs and kind of the problems that exist both in bigger networks and also in sole proprietor LLC business-ish, like practitioners, right? And but the driver behind all of that was obviously we were selling other supplements. But if we trained you in the programs and the systems, and I got in and I learned how you did medicine, I could show you how to use our tools to enhance what you were doing. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but I was taking a master class because I was working with hundreds of doctors. I'd sit in on their cases, and I would see how every kind of different doctor would solve a problem. So let's take the problem of fibromyalgia. Okay. I could see how an NP, DO, MD, Reiki, reflexologist, you name it, NP, ND, anything, letters of the alphabet you want, right? I would see how they would approach a 360-degree problem of functional health with a 90-degree solution. Because the number one problem that exists in medicine, in my opinion, is speciality, meaning a specialization.
Yeah, you get so compartmentalized, you get sent from one to the other, and none of them ever communicate and know what the other is doing, and no one ever looks at it holistically.
You're exactly right. And the reason for that is because logically, if you're a doctor, Erica, and I'm a doctor, it's like, well, you stay in your lane, okay, and I'll stay in mine. All right, don't be taking mine. Don't take what's mine, and you don't take what's yours. I won't take what's yours. And this is what we're going to do. So everyone gets to play nice. So here's how we're going to divvy it up. There's 11 systems of the body, and you're going to take the endocrine system. Okay, so you only have thyroid, adrenal, all that other stuff. And then I'm gut. So I take the GI tract. Okay, so stay out of my business. Totally. Right. And then you're going to make money, and I'm going to make money, and everything's going to be great. Okay. The only unfortunate side effect from that is we don't talk. You don't get a Cleveland Clinic feel in the United States from Western medicine. No one's talking. So the problem is once any problem that you've had, I don't care if it's tennis elbow, has gone longer than 6 months, you've gone from acute to chronic. And when you move into chronic, what that kind of means is that multiple systems are now involved. Even in the concept of the tennis elbow. If I get tennis elbow once, it goes away in a couple months, but then it comes back again and it sticks around for 3, 4, 5 months. And now I've been dealing with it on and off for a while. I'm not just dealing with a musculoskeletal issue. I'm now dealing with an immune issue, like the immune system's gotten involved. I'm dealing with an inflammatory issue. Do you understand what I'm saying? Multiple systems are now involved. And so to solve that problem may not be as simple as rest and ice. It may take some steroid shots or whatever conventionally they're going to do in Western medicine or whatever, and rest, or, all the things. So weight is very much the same thing. We tend to look at weight as the root problem. Like, you have a weight issue, so you need to get the weight off. And I would say, no, what are all the 11 systems of the body that are off, that are working together as a function, that are creating dysfunction? And by fixing those systems together in a process, now the weight will fall off instead of chasing the weight itself.
Right.
And that's why everybody thinks the solution to weight management is eat less, move more. And I think that's
farthest from the truth.
I think that's very logical. I don't find it to be very wise, because as a trainer back in the day, that's what I did. You came in. This is when it was popular finally we thought we were part of the women's movement, because women didn't go to the gym for the weights. They went for the cardio. And so we were like the first set of trainers that was like, no, weights are for women. And it was like, oh, this great thing. And it was good. But the problem is, what we did was we treated them like small men. Right? So, you're just a 5'2" male, right? And so then what you're doing is you're really low calorie, high protein, no carb. And then excuse my language, you're beating the shit out of them in the gym 5 to 6 times a week with an hour of cardio on top of it. And let me tell you something, Erica, that works at first. And you look like a genius. But you stress the body out so much, and it's such an amazing machine, it learns and it wants to survive. So every time that you do that, it starts to learn how to counteract it. And so at the time, it was working. But then as my career went on, it started working less and less. And it definitely, on the people that kept coming back, the repeat offenders, it definitely started showing more and more problems.
Yeah, I mean, that just sets off a whole cascade of hormonal issues and, adrenal fatigue and all those things. And I'm totally guilty of it in my 20s too. Like, I ate less, worked out more, did the weights, did the cardio. I looked good at first, and then I was just like, why is my hair falling out? Why haven't I had my period in 6 months? Like, what's happening? Why am I always tired? And I was also a vegetarian at the time, but I wasn't being a good vegetarian. So that just was really depleting me, not getting enough protein, eating more carbs instead of protein when I'm trying to build this muscle. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad that phase has finally walked away from our kind of realm and world, and people are starting to realize that diet is important, nourishing your body is important, not pushing yourself so much is important as well, and just kind of letting your body heal and rest in between, and pushing it when you want to, or when you're ready, right?
Yeah, I think one of the dangers that women don't recognize, and this is where a lot of the weight issues, because people want to attribute most of the weight loss resistance, or the fact that people are gaining so much weight today, they want to say that it's calories and it's lack of movement. And that's the only reason, right? That's the only reason that Americans are all times high with their biomass, weight, overweight, obese. In a couple years, 2030, close to 50% of America will be not just overweight, but obese.
It's wild, isn't it?
Right. And so when you look at the staggering rates, and something that we know when we look at like farmers' almanacs, and you look at some of the data that did exist, people ate about the same amount of calories all the way back to 1940. I know that sounds strange, but it did exist. Was activity different? Certainly was. Okay. I will say that. They did more walking, which I think is a big factor. So don't get me wrong. But there are many other variables that are beginning to shift down the metabolic rate of the average human being. And that's what I believe is the pandemic of our time, because maybe, Erica, you experienced this. When your metabolism begins to slow down, it is a cascade of hormonal, pro-inflammatory, oxidative issues that occur. And then usually what follows that is some form of condition. PCOS, mood, mind, mental issues, mood disorders, prediabetes, diabetes,
Hashimoto's,
autoimmune,
thyroid
GI issues, right? And we see this play out time and time and time again. And I think the reason that people think it doesn't exist, or kind of hint that it doesn't, is because we're only talking about the 30% of the people that aren't really included in the studies. Like when you look at research, even if one standard deviation away from the mean, like if you read research that says, oh, the average person should walk 2 hours a day or something like that. Let's say it's that. Well, if you read the research and you understand how research works and statistics work, you know that that actually only applies accurately to about 68% of people. And then there's going to be about these, so there's 32% left, which roughly comes out to about 16%. 16% probably need 3 hours of walking, and 16% need 1 hour of walking. Do you understand? So because of how standard deviations work. So a lot of the mainstream research that's done on metabolism, by the way, is only done on males. It's not done on really, really busy people who undereat,
or
like
women,
the average female.
Or women.
It's not done on chronic dieters and people that are really high stress. And the reason is those people don't have time to do the research. So you're not looking at the 33% that are being affected right now, or 32%. And then the other component of that is there's not large enough sample sizes that look at specific groups of populations, like types of women. Most metabolism studies include men and women, or all women at different life stages, except for maybe just menopause or, whatever. And because you do that, you don't see the degree of variance that you would pick up. There needs to be more research, is what I'm getting at, that specifically looks at populations of people having this problem. And then you're going to see how widespread the problem really is. And I believe it's happening to every American on some scale. I think today the average metabolism of a person outside of their activity scores or levels or anything is beginning to slow down. And I have many arguments to why. In my network, the businesses that we have, is a concierge medicine, but it's also a series of businesses between the university that teaches our methods, between all of our coaching centers, between our medical clinics, our supplement companies, our labs distribution companies. We have all of these companies because the people that work for them believe, right, that what's happening to American health is happening on a cellular level, and it's slowing our metabolic rates down and making us less successful in a high caloric, high carbohydrate environment that we live in today. And that's our fundamental thesis when it comes to one of the problems that we're dealing with, which is the pandemic of our time, which is lifestyle disease.
Absolutely.
Right? In America and the world.
Yep. And so I want to chime in here a little bit and talk a little bit about your practice. So, I mean, you do a lot of stuff where you're looking for someone's root cause, whether it's like a metabolic issue, if they're dealing with weight gain, also, autoimmune conditions. And I feel like, it's unfortunate, like at age 7 that you were already kind of dealing with the unexplained symptoms and the unexplained conditions, right? Like I experienced that when I was in my early 30s. And I feel like every day I talk to at least like 2 to 3 people that are like, hey, I have these like weird symptoms. Do you like know what this could be? Or like, I have like, acid reflux or gut issues, or I'm tired all the time, or brain fog. And it's just mind blowing how many people are dealing with these conditions. So what are some of the triggers? Is it our environment? Is it our diet? Is it underlying infections? Or what are you finding in your practice when you work with these people that come to you that are complaining about these different symptom sets? And what are you finding is kind of common root causes between all of those symptoms?
The first thing that I want to say to anybody listening or watching this is that my view of this is from such a 10,000 foot high view, because I was the guy behind all the guys for nearly 8 years and what is one of the best in the country at doing it. So I saw all the problems that all the different doctors were having. So if a new condition was washing up on the shores, I would see it first because it would wash into the shores of all the functional practitioners I was working with for people looking for solutions. So when I tell you that we're in the beginning stages of a tsunami of unexplained rare conditions, particularly post-COVID, people have no idea the scale that I'm talking about. And even research from NATO, NIH, American Heart Association, they all agree that by 2030, 7 out of 10 people are going to have some kind of lifestyle related disease, right? And COVID really sped that up pretty heavily. And so I got to look at how everybody tried to solve the problem. And so what I wanted to do was create a network where a lot of those solutions were all in one place, that we're all organized together. Because solving complex systems, which is what the body is, requires multiple inputs being put in the right order and the right amount of time, like growing a lawn. Like if you want to get optimal health back, you need to get back into alignment, mind, body, and spirit. Okay. So if you don't have people helping on all three levels of those while you're putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, you're unlikely to find the synergy that creates resiliency, where you can go back out in the world, take some lumps, take some problems, take some stress, and survive it and thrive under it. Big difference between asymptomatology, meaning I don't experience a symptom, and resiliency, meaning I can go through hard times and still be asymptomatic.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think it's so important, like you said, to kind of have all those things in alignments, because, especially if you're more in the Western realm, you're not going to get any of that. You're just going to be focusing on like, what's your symptom? How do we make your symptom go away? And then, like the naturopathic or like more functional side, it's like, let's find the root cause. But then there's that middle ground too of like, how are you managing your stress? How are you like, what's your spiritual connection? What's your mind body connection? And I think that those things are so important as well. And it's good to see that there's something out there with you now that's kind of melding all those three together, because they're all equally important and no one's going to help you kind of guide through each of those pieces in order to feel better.
Yeah. So for example, I've assembled like the best team of 70 coaches, PTs, MDs, nurse practitioners, NPs all together. And the way our program kind of works is when you come in, it's all kind of included. So you get the dietitian, trainer, doctor, but you got a head coach that's walking through the whole thing. But we're working everything from the nervous system to all of the lifestyle, stress, emotional components to the functional, nutritional components. And we do it all in one program to try to tie it all together and make it make sense for you. Because unlike most people who don't start their disease at 7 years old, most of you don't have a lifetime to lose. And I did lose a lifetime. I mean, I lost like 20 years. And I don't want that for people. So I have to speed up the learning curve. Otherwise, you're going to be out there first movering this thing and you're never going to solve it on your own. Right. So it all has to connect it. So coming back to what you're saying, like, what do we think is like, because everyone debates this, Erica, like, and I've been listening to this for a long time. Someone's like, oh, it's all carbs, and then someone's gonna be like, no, it's calories. And someone's gonna be like, no, it's inactivity. And then someone's gonna be like, no, it's toxins in our environment. And like, you talk to 17 different people, you're going to get 17 other things. And it's usually related to the thing that they first encountered as a problem. Most people are full of knowledge and very little wisdom. So you come to know, for example, Erica, one of the things is the average American, particularly let's talk about women, from the age of 13 years old will try to lose weight twice a year, every year till they're like 62. Okay. And they will try to use the same diet that they originally lost weight to do it. Right. And they will try to stay on that diet after, which shows you that we have logic. It would be logical to like go back to the well over and over and over and over again, but it's not very wise, right? Because you have a misunderstanding of how the body works. Practitioners, influencers are no different. So like if somebody was struggling with something and then found something that helped them not struggle anymore, they're going to think that everything has to do with that. And then that's the truth. And so most of what you're hearing on social media is people are in the middle of their healing journeys and they're not wise enough to know they haven't reached the end yet. So you're just hearing everyone be like, everything's Lion's diet, everything's intermittent fasting, everything's keto, everything's CrossFit. No, that's just where you are. I'm glad you showed up, but like, it was like me, like when I remember when I, went through the 12 steps of recovery and I found God and all this shit. And I showed up in my life and I was talking to everybody. I'm like, you don't have Jesus. And I'm talking to everybody like, how do you not know, this, that, and the other? And it's because I arrived spiritually and emotionally, but everyone else around me was the same. Of course they are. Like they're like,
they haven't gone through their transformation yet.
Right. So then you can run around beating everybody with logic or truth, but you don't really understand. And then I didn't know, I was still a rookie and I didn't know anything, but I thought I knew a lot because that's what logical or knowledge will do to you. It'll make you think you're smart, but you really don't know jack. So what you're hearing is a lot of people in the middle of their healing journeys that when you talk to them in 5 years, they're going to have a lot of a different answer than they do today. but people are pretty convincing when something works, right? And so you don't understand the full story. Like you were talking about vegan, for example, right? So veganism can be a great thing. It depends what you're doing it for. And plant-based is good, right? Plant-based is great. We love that. So a lot of people, when they're going through an emotional struggle and they start hearing about how terrible the world is to animals, and they start hearing about animal products, and they start hearing about the stuff, and then they start kind of, I don't really like heavier meats and stuff like that. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to give this up and I'm going to go plant-based. That initially sounds good. And by going more plant-based, if you actually do, unless you go processed plant-based, so you just eat fries and tofu chicken nuggets, right? Like that's not really going to work. But if you enter more plants have lots of, so they have a lot of what we call microtoxins. This is the important point. They have toxins in them that stimulate new bacteria and that create antioxidants, just to be clear. Like the body, it shocks the microbiome. And it's a really good thing, right? It's a good thing to have a bunch of plants. The problem is if you keep doing that and you don't get enough protein, your B12 is going to get down, your iron might get shot, your CoQ10 might get shot, all of these things, and then you start muscle wasting, and then you take too many of the plants, because if I eat a lot of plants in a short period of time and my microbiome's not ready for it, it will create overgrowth. So now I have all these gut issues because I overate the plants. I never stopped eating the plants, and I ate maybe the same plant all the time. And every food, whether it's meat or plant or whatever, has a toxin in it. And if I eat that same food 9 million times, that toxin is going to build up in my system and cause irritation. That irritation is going to move to my immune system. My immune system is going to get overactive. And now I'm going to get sensitive to all kinds of crap. And I'm going to blame it on gluten. Okay. Not that gluten isn't something that you shouldn't be worried about, but it's not all gluten. This is another one. Everyone's like, no, it's all gluten in our diet. It's like, no, that was your problem.
It's so easy to blame just one thing. I noticed this a lot in the Lyme community where I was in the beginning of my journey, and it was like everything was Lyme, and I'm like, no, some symptoms may not be Lyme. Some symptoms may be like what you're saying, like what you're eating isn't good for you, or something else that's going on in your environment. And it's just so easy to blame what you're in the thick of, I think. And
so I come onto a lot of podcasts that focus on Lyme. I've got something to tell you about Lyme. This is another one.
All right.
I don't know. We don't have enough. If I open this can of worms with you,
is this a whole other episode?
Lyme is not Lyme. I'm just going to leave that statement. It's not what we think it is. Not chronic Lyme is not the same thing as Lyme. Just like long hauler COVID is not COVID. Okay. It's an undiagnosed IMID, immune-mediated inflammatory disease. It's not the Lyme anymore. But because we keep chasing the Lyme, we never get well emotionally because we keep focused on the Lyme. I am Lyme now, right? Just like emotions, right? And they keep trying to find ways to kill the Lyme, but really what you're trying to do is stimulate the immune system in a way that balances it back out.
I couldn't agree more. And after going through my own journey, I think that's the thing that people get. I mean, clearly there's studies that show like persistent Lyme persister cells and things like that, which you do need to do a phase of killing. But I think at a certain point you need to shift gears.
But Erica, what are they tracking to see if you have Lyme?
There's no test, right? You're just going out your symptoms. No test.
They look at your antibodies.
Yep.
Right. And so guess what COVID taught us? There was a study on 500 people. You can look up the study yourself. 500 people that had early antigen for SARS-CoV. They were active COVID. And they tested EBV and Lyme. And do you know what they found, Erica?
Positive Lyme and EBV.
88% of people were positive early antigen, Lyme, and EBV. And none of them had either one of them.
I've always said this, that I feel like it's people that had like unawakened Lyme or something that just kind of stirred up and got their immune system inflamed and just set off an inflammatory effect. Because it's like all the symptoms and the way people are describing long COVID just overlap so much with like EBV and chronic Lyme. And that's what like my approach was like. I was like, at a certain point, I was like, I've killed enough. Like I have to have killed this. Like I need to work on the terrain of my body, like, clean my toxins out and like work on like immune modulation. And that's where I kind of shifted gears and just focused on that, did stem cells, did peptides, did like thymus and things like that. And then knock on wood, I've been in remission 8 years. So
there you go. Congratulations, by the way. And we call that, Erica. That's why 5 years ago I came out with called OID, overactive immune disorder, because EBV, Lyme, long hauler COVID, autoimmune disorders, menopause, all behave very similarly. And there's a reason. They're all immune mediated significantly. Okay. So, and almost all of those categories, Erica, have what? Weight loss resistance.
I've had that too.
Right. So, but that's why we came with OAD, and we have a 95% rate on Lyme, total resolution. We offer a guarantee in 12 weeks. If anybody, I don't care if anybody's listening to this and you're struggling with Lyme and you can't figure it out, it's on me. Come to this program. You don't get it in 12 weeks. We work with you for free till you do. Because we know what it is now. Like it's not the Lyme. Your body it's called molecular mimicry. So once you've been stimulated with a herpetic virus of almost any kind, EBV, CMV, or anything like that, or you've had some other kind of co-infection that may be similar to the Lyme, or lots of people have been exposed to Lyme and just never got Lyme disease, way more than we realize.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just in there waiting for a rainy day to come out and cause an inflammatory storm, right?
Well, when the immune system gets upregulated, it will kick up all of its old antibodies, but it doesn't mean it has active virus. So that's why I'm trying to tell you, it's a false flag. Just like you can have an ANA, anti-nuclear antibody, pop up when you have the cold or flu. You don't have more ANA. It's a false positive from the cold.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So your body can throw up false flags. And if the immune system gets triggered by stress or a different food, or your hormones change, I ovulate or I menstruate, it can kick that up, right? And all it's reflecting is immune activity. It's not reflecting necessarily where there's more or less of an actual virus or a bacteria. Okay. And so that's where that's why we challenge the medical system so much. Stop looking at those numbers. It's doing you no good. Let it go. That's not where the problem is. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the Lyme testing is so inaccurate anyways. Like you said, it's only testing your antibodies. So technically you should always probably have antibodies to it because you've had it at some point, right? So it's not like you're looking for that test to change or using it as a gauge for testing. Exactly. Who knows how long you've had those antibodies? Like you can kind of tell with IgG, IgM, but it's not really that accurate, So yeah, I think, people get so stuck on testing, and until we have better testing that can actually gauge progress using those labs is really kind of
it's going to bring me that brings it full circle, Erica. You asked me a question earlier. You said, Vince, what is the main thing? If I could tell you, if there was one thing, what would the thing be? Right? Because it's not one thing, but the culmination of multiple things does lead to the formation of one thing. And I'm going to guess that this is the first time on your podcast everyone's ever going to has ever talked about this. So I'm hoping I'm bringing something new and exciting. And
absolutely. I feel like we need to do a whole other episode on just deep diving into inflammation and like immune modulation and kind of.
So I have a whole, that's why my whole university, we're opening up my private protocols now to the rest of the university for the immune treatments that we do. It's changed my career. We're doing the impossible. I mean, we're solving everything. Like I never thought going from a personal trainer into a functional health expert, into, founding a concierge medicine platform. I never thought that I would be able to solve the things. I show up every day and I am amazed at what the human body can do if given the right conditions. And I'm not talking about helping somebody lose some weight or get over prediabetes. I'm talking about 20-year lupus. I'm talking about, 20-year infertility. I'm talking about stuff like that. People that are supposed to get liver transplants and then don't have to. Like, I'm talking that. Like, that's a lot of the stuff behind the scenes that we do at Vidal Coaching. If you look on Instagram, you're going to see a bunch of before and afters because it's a visual platform.
Mm-hmm. People want to see results. They want to see results before they commit to paying.
That's what draws people in to buy the program, but then we're going to give them what they need. It's like, but the thing is, here's what we know. Okay. Why is it that 80% of autoimmune disorders are women? 80% of long hauler COVID sufferers are women. Why is 70% of idiopathic inflammatory disorders women? Why are infertility rates through the roof? PCOS through the roof? Hashimoto's through the roof? Why do these continue to grow despite medicine's best efforts to grow? There's more medicine, more doctors, more health networks, more science, and more drugs than ever, yet rates of disease are at all-time rates. So it's because it's not working, because the problem doesn't exist on a procedure or pill level alone. If I had to give you the thesis of what the main problem is, it is not, and this is probably going to upset some people. It is not processed
okay.
food.
Let's do it. Let's get them upset.
It's not processed food.
Yeah.
I went round and round on this. It's not GMO food. We keep blaming it. It's not alkalinity in your water or lack of or acidity in your water. It's a combination of it early on, right off the bat. Because of inadequate nutrition, most children are born, okay, without all the appropriate nutrients for methylation, okay? And they've done studies on this, how it changes in mammals, how it changes what genes are expressed. This is where you get into talking about nutrigenomics, right? Talking about how nutrition or environment or lifestyle will change gene expression. Proteomics, right? And looking at this. And so part of what I know, because we know that immunological conditions or your preset immunity is passed through something called mtDNA and other maternal DNA. So your daughter, let's say, or your child, Erica, is going to have a lot more of the proper encoding for how to survive your environment from what you went through. And that happens on a cellular level and then is manipulated, we know, by things like folate, choline, B vitamins, B12, B6, B2, B1, and the list goes on and on, okay? So being malnourished and being overstimulated and under a high oxidative stress environment, it's going to create children that tend to have more uppity immune systems, that happen to be more sensitive, that happen to have all these different, the immune systems are going to be more quick to be aggressive. Okay, this is a problem later. We'll explain in a second. Then you're born, and immediately you're hit with so many, right, vaccines. The average kid before 7 years old is taken anywhere from 5 to 7 rounds of antibiotics. Okay. All of these things are insults to the immune system. Plus, we're not outside. Like the one thing I had going for me, although I got exposed to stuff and it wasn't a great deal, we have to expose our immune system at a very early age. To any boxer will tell you that before he ever steps in the ring with a real live opponent, he's had 24 dummy opponents where he's boxed them around. It was easy, right? Because you got to get practice before you hit the big leagues. We see it with peanut allergy. They've done studies on peanut allergy. If you expose a child to peanut powder right out of the womb, they are 95% less likely to get peanut allergy. But the kids that are hyper unexposed to things all have allergy and peanut allergy. Okay. So we understand that lack of stimulus leads to hypersensitivity. Okay. And so what happens is then we're exposed to thousands of industrial chemicals right away. Particularly the one is flame retardant. Okay. It's in babies, everything. It's in the bottles. Yeah. It's in the clothes. They're huffing it in the carpet. Like it's everywhere. PFAs. Mm-hmm. So now we're getting like over inundated with irregular chemicals. We're also eating food that has a bunch of processed agents in it. Okay. It's no one thing now. Remember, I have a hypersensitive child that through what we understand of how a mother lived, typically the environment that they're in and the lack of nutrition that may exist in that mother when they're born, it can change your genetic expression. Okay. So now I'm hypersensitive already. And then now I'm being exposed to all these things, okay, in my environment, in my water, in my food. And then I'm taking a bunch of antibiotics, which are your 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So I'm not forming a really strong, diverse microbiome. Okay. I'm not being exposed to things I should be exposed to.
And also being
except for
born by
chemicals.
C-section does that too, right? Like, don't you kind of
C-section,
build up
exactly.
your microbiome as you're coming out, and
Your
then
microbiome for at least 5 to 7 days look more like the doctor who delivered you than the mother who made you. Now that will change as you spend time with people. But once again, you're under assault. Okay. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So this is where things begin to differ. Because as boys grow up, they drop androgens. Androgens calm the immune system a little bit. But women, when they start producing hormone, activate the immune system through estrogen. T and B cell lymphocytes, the adaptive immune system, has more estrogen receptor sites than it does androgens. That's why when you either go estrogen dominant or you go into menopause, you have heightened immune function, which leads to a pro-inflammatory state. See, if you look at net total inflammation that your body makes in a day, the governor to that, the thing that controls how much you make, is your immune system. Off the top, it doesn't matter whether I eat spinach or a cheeseburger, I'm going to make total body inflammation is going to be around 20%, is going to be food I eat. All food's pro-inflammatory, all food, because the process of making energy is pro-oxidative. If I eat processed food at a younger age, maybe it goes to 25 or 28%. But when I'm younger, I should be able to process all of that and get rid of the toxins. It shouldn't be much of a problem. So then why, Erica, do 25% of children have hyperglycemia, dysglycemia, or prediabetes? You can't eat enough ho-hos, Erica, to create that much oxidative stress that dysregulates the metabolism. Trust me, I tried. Okay? You can't. There has to be a secondary pro-inflammatory condition occurring that magnifies the oxidative stress of the food, because processed food ain't going to do it alone. And that's why in short-term studies, they can't prove processed food causes harm. We obviously see it in long-term models, okay? But you can't do double-blind placebo-controlled studies for 17, 25, 45 years. You can't. We can see it with our eyes, but we can't prove it in the paper under a microscope watching these people for very long.
Yeah.
Okay. But
People
with
just have to see
women,
how they
here's what
feel
happens.
over time, right?
Yeah.
They have to see how they feel.
But with women, then something really interesting happens that is a human experiment that we don't fully understand the ramifications of. And that means every woman between the age of 12 to 18 is going to be put on what? A hormone modulator. All of them. Every single woman will at some point, for at least 1 year of their life, during their vital years that they can conceive, will go on a hormonal-based birth control. This is where one of the big changes in the sexes happens, a definitive shift in the life of both man and woman, outside of their hormonal shifts that will occur, that will change immune modulation, that will change structurally. But right before this, boys and girls ain't that different. But then we begin to express heavily, hormonally, the differences, right? And right when women are about to go through that, what do? We shut it down. And we implant hormones. Synthetic hormone birth control significantly reduces T regulatory cells, and it's not something that is covered enough in the data, but there's clear evidence, and your T regulatory cells prevent cytokine storms. So like what happens to people in long haul or COVID, like if you get stimulated with a stressor, instead of your cytokine storm getting too out of control and your adaptive immune system getting too out of control, your T regulatory cells are like mama bear who stop a bar fight from happening with a bunch of girls. It kind of comes in and goes, chill out, everybody calm down.
Yeah.
And without that there,
sense.
it reduces it by anywhere from 5 to 20%. So now you start having these immunological flares that overreact. Coming back to the total amount of inflammation that your body makes, another 20% is physical. So me moving around causes inflammation. I don't know if anybody knows this, but working out's pro-inflammatory. Maybe you should never work out. No, but its stimulus of inflammation leads to what? An antioxidant, anti-inflammatory response by your muscles. Just like when I eat food, like plants, where the carnivores would say there's all these toxins that they're trying to kill you. No, that's not how the body works. You're leaving out a part that's very important. In response to the oxidative stress, your body will release antioxidants and create glutathione. So a little bit of poison is good. A lot of
Just a little
poison
bit,
bad.
just a little bit.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I'm sharing this with you, this becomes important, is because the other bit, the other about 60% of total stimulated inflammation is controlled by none other than your immune system. It will get rid of cells. It will trigger inflammatory responses. Because what is inflammation? All it is a stimulus of change. So like whether it's an emotional stress, whether it's a physical stress, whether it's a chemical stress, it is a stimulus to create change. If you did not have stress, you would die. Stress causes inflammation. It has to, because inflammation is the signal, is the messenger signal for change. Okay? It's when change is too high of a signal for too long that instead of getting positive changes, you get tissue breakdown. Like gravity. Gravity is inflammatory. Should we get rid of gravity? No, it stimulates the osteoclast and osteoblasts in your bone to create more bone. But if gravity got 4x on you, like you got too far deep in the sea, right, without a suit on or something, and you don't hold your breath, it'll crush you like a can, right? Because it broke and caused tissue damage.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. No, I think this has been such an important topic. I
Yeah.
think people always hear the word like inflammation and they don't really know like what does it mean or how is it affecting me. So I feel like we need to do an entire part 2 to this
And I will close out
podcast
with
and
this.
dive deep
I will close
into
out with this. So what
inflammation.
happens in response? The oxidative stress in your body starts killing off cells, but those cells don't go away, especially larger immune cells. They get stuck. It damages your mtDNA, which is what you transfer onto your children, and it damages your cellular DNA. Those cells over time can't make copies anymore, and they turn into what are called senescent cells.
Mm-hmm.
And you may
Zombie
be familiar with the word
cells.
senescent cell.
Zombie cells.
Zombie cells.
Yeah.
So the number one problem that the average person is having is their cellular age and the creation of zombie cells due to an overstimulated, oxidative stress-ridden body from a hyperimmune system, overstimulated by too many emotional, chemical, and physical triggers. There is no one bad guy. It is the entire environment or lifestyle. And you want to try to touch on all of these things in little amounts to try to create a great outcome. That's why if you over focus on gluten, you're missing the point. If you over focus on your workouts, you're missing the point. If you over focus on your calories, you're missing the point. It is the net total of these pro-inflammatory stimuluses that then lead to tissue damage, that lead to these senescent cell buildup. And as they build in your body, they're creating, they're like hot coals, and they're just releasing inflammation. They're not processing glucose, which is why sugars can go up in people who are not eating a lot of food, because they're not absorbing it, because their body's not processing glucose because of these cells. And we're proving it more and more every day. They're taking elderly and they're doing these exams on them that die from idiopathic unknown origin reasons. And they're finding big pockets of these undead cells in them. And that is why I believe that's what Lyme happens. A cytokine storm, a bunch of these senescent cells are created. They're causing havoc in there. You're still trying to treat the Lyme, and you got to give your body all the things that it needs to remove those cells. And there is a biological process to do that. The body, if given what it needs, will do that. And that is how you reverse all disease across the world and bend the morbidity curve, or slow the morbidity curve, and help Americans or anyone live an amazing, long-lasting, high vitality life. And that's the summary.
I love it. This is great. And if people want to find you and work with you, what's the best place to find you online? I'm going to share your
Right
Instagram
now,
and your website.
You can go to my YouTube, Metabolic Mentor YouTube. You can go to my Instagram, Vince_Pitstick. That's an Australian deodorant, pit and stick, although I'm not Australian. Long story there. So Vince_Pitstick on Instagram. I do lives every Monday. I break down the sciences to this stuff. I also have a university, Metabolic Mentor University. If you want to learn this stuff for yourself or as a coach or a practitioner, we teach doctors and coaches all over the world. But this information that we're trying to get to you, will change your life. And if this has moved you at all in just this hour, I encourage you to push forward, seek out things like learning about immunosenescence and senescent cells, or seek out learning about the immune system and how it controls inflammation. And I promise you, you'll know a truth that very little people in the world knows, while everyone else is circling the drain about gluten or like whatever. And you'll start to learn more about what's really going on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vince.
Appreciate it.